Listen, if you've ever stayed awake wondering whether someone truly loves you or is only afraid of losing what you give them, then hear this carefully. Real love doesn't hide behind confusion. It reveals itself in the questions someone asks you. And there are two questions that only a person who genuinely loves you will keep asking. Because love is always curious about your heart, not just your presence. When people talk about love, they often focus on the grand gestures, the expensive gifts, the long text messages, the romantic vacations, the dramatic declarations that fill movies and social media. But real love has never depended on any of those things. Real love is quieter. It pays attention. It notices the small changes in your voice before anyone else hears them. It recognizes the smile that doesn't quite reach your eyes. It remembers the dream you mentioned 3 months ago. It senses when you're pretending to be okay because you don't want to become someone else's burden. That is the difference between someone who loves you and someone who simply enjoys the benefits of having you. Many people love the comfort you provide. Very few love your soul. And that difference becomes obvious not through promises, but through questions. You see, someone who is only interested in what you can do for them rarely asks about your inner world. They ask questions that help them get what they want. They ask where you are, what you're doing, when you'll be available, whether you can help them, whether you're upset with them. Their curiosity begins and ends with themselves. But someone who genuinely loves you becomes a student of your heart. They study you, not because they're trying to control you, because they're trying to understand you. One of the greatest mistakes people make after heartbreak is believing that love should always feel exciting. So they chase butterflies instead of peace. They chase chemistry instead of character. They chase attention instead of intention. But butterflies eventually settle. Excitement comes and goes. Character stays. The healthiest relationships aren't built by two perfect people who never argue. They're built by two emotionally mature people who keep choosing understanding over assumptions. Think back to every relationship that left you emotionally exhausted. How many times did you feel unheard? How many nights did you explain the same pain over and over again, hoping that this time they would finally understand? How many mornings did you wake up feeling lonelier beside someone than you ever did by yourself? That wasn't because you were too emotional. It wasn't because you expected too much. It was because you were trying to build intimacy with someone who never became curious about your emotional world. People who love you want access to your heart. People who use you only want access to your availability. There is a world of difference. Sometimes we confuse obsession with love. Someone texts you every hour. They constantly ask where you are. They become jealous whenever someone else gives you attention. At first, it feels flattering. You tell yourself, they must really care. But possession is not love. Control is not care. Fear is not intimacy. Someone can think about you every minute of the day and still never truly see you. Love doesn't imprison, love understands, and understanding begins with questions, not accusations. Questions. There is incredible power in asking someone about their heart instead of assuming you already know it, because assumptions create distance. Curiosity creates connection. Imagine two couples sitting in separate homes tonight. In one home, one partner walks through the door carrying invisible pain. They smile. They say they're fine. The evening continues like every other evening. Nobody notices the exhaustion behind the smile. Nobody asks another question. Weeks become months. Months become years. Eventually, one person says, I don't feel seen anymore. The relationship didn't collapse overnight. It slowly starved because curiosity disappeared. Now imagine another couple. One person comes home after an exhausting day. They force a smile. But before they can hide behind it, the other quietly says, your smile looks different today. Those 6 words change everything. Suddenly the walls begin to fall. The conversation becomes honest. The burden becomes lighter. Not because someone solved every problem, because someone cared enough to notice. That's love. Love doesn't always fix your storms. Sometimes it simply sits beside you until the storm passes. And in today's world, where everyone is rushing to speak, very few people have learned the art of asking. We live in a generation that broadcasts every opinion, but rarely listens with intention. Everyone wants to be understood. Few people become understanding. That is why emotionally mature love feels so rare. It doesn't compete for attention. It creates safety. Safety is one of the most misunderstood forms of romance. People think romance is flowers. Romance is remembering how someone takes their coffee after a difficult week. People think romance is expensive dinners. Romance is noticing they became unusually quiet halfway through the conversation. People think romance is saying, "I love you." Romance is proving those words through consistent attention. The strongest relationships are built on emotional safety. When someone knows they can bring you their fears without being judged, their failures without being criticized, their tears without being embarrassed, that's where real intimacy begins. You cannot fake emotional safety. It grows through thousands of moments where someone chooses compassion over criticism. And eventually, something beautiful happens. The relationship stops becoming a performance. Neither person feels the need to pretend anymore. Masks fall, truth arrives. Love becomes deeper than attraction. It becomes partnership. That kind of love survives difficult seasons. It survives financial stress. It survives misunderstandings. It survives distance because its foundation isn't perfection, it's understanding. Many heartbreaks happen because people stop asking questions. Instead of asking, they assume. Instead of listening, they defend. Instead of understanding, they react. And little by little, two hearts that once felt inseparable begin speaking completely different emotional languages. The tragedy isn't always that love disappeared. Sometimes love was simply buried beneath pride, ego, and silence. Never underestimate what one sincere conversation can rescue. Sometimes one honest question opens a door that months of arguments could never unlock. The strongest people aren't those who always know the right answers. They're the ones humble enough to ask the right questions. That brings us to the first question a person who truly loves you keeps asking. Not because they're insecure, but because your emotional well-being genuinely matters to them. They ask, "How are you really?" Notice the difference. Not the automatic "how are you" that people ask while already looking at their phones. Not the polite greeting everyone says out of habit. They pause, they look into your eyes, and they quietly ask, "How are you really?" That single word changes everything, really, because they know your first answer might not be the true one. They know strong people often hide their pain. They know independent people sometimes struggle in silence. They know smiles can become masks. And because they love you, they don't settle for the mask. They patiently wait for the truth behind it. They don't pressure you. They simply create enough safety for honesty to appear. That question isn't about collecting information. It's about communicating something far more valuable. I'm here. You don't have to carry this alone. Your emotions matter to me. For someone who has spent years feeling unseen, those words become healing. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't giving advice. It's giving someone permission to finally tell the truth about how they're feeling. That is the beginning of emotional intimacy. That is where trust begins to grow. And that is why the first question reveals more about love than 1,000 romantic promises ever could. There comes a moment in every relationship when attraction alone is no longer enough. The excitement settles. The late night conversations become less frequent. Life becomes busy. Responsibilities grow heavier. Stress replaces spontaneity. Bills appear. Family problems arrive. Unexpected disappointments test your patience. That is where many relationships begin to fade. Not because love disappeared, because curiosity disappeared. The person who once wanted to know everything about your heart slowly becomes someone who assumes they already know you. They stop asking. They stop listening. They stop noticing. And without realizing it, they stop growing with you. Here's the truth most people never hear. The person you fell in love with 5 years ago no longer exists. Neither do you. Life changes people. Pain changes people. Healing changes people. Success changes people. Failure changes people. Every season of life introduces a new version of us. That is why lasting love requires constant rediscovery. A person who truly loves you never believes they have completely figured you out. Instead, they remain curious. They understand that loving someone means continually learning who they are becoming. That's why the second question is so powerful. It's simple, it's sincere, and it separates temporary affection from lifelong commitment. The second question is, what can I do to make your life easier? Think about that for a moment. Not, what are you doing for me? Not, why aren't you making me happier? Not, what can I get from this relationship? But, what can I do to make your life easier? That question reveals the heart of real love. Because genuine love isn't obsessed with being served. It is focused on serving. Now, that doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear. Healthy love is never one-sided. It isn't about constantly giving while receiving nothing in return. Healthy love is mutual. Both people naturally look for ways to lighten each other's burdens. Imagine coming home after one of the hardest days of your life. Your mind is exhausted. Your heart is heavy. You expect another conversation centered around complaints and obligations. Instead, someone looks at you with kindness and quietly asks, what can I do to make today a little easier for you? Maybe they can't solve your problems. Maybe they can't erase your anxiety. But in that moment, something incredible happens. You no longer feel like you're facing life alone. That is what love does. Love reminds you that you have a teammate, not a judge, not a competitor, not someone keeping score, a teammate. Unfortunately, many relationships become scoreboards. I did this for you. I sacrificed more. I loved harder. Real love doesn't constantly count. It contributes. That's why emotionally mature people rarely ask, who's winning? They ask, how can we win together? There's a beautiful lesson hidden inside this. When someone consistently asks how they can support you, they aren't just helping your circumstances, they're strengthening your trust. Trust isn't built through words. It's built through repeated actions that say, I see your struggle. I care about your peace. I'm willing to help. Over time, those moments become the invisible threads that hold two hearts together. People often ask why some couples stay deeply connected after 20 or 30 years. The answer usually isn't extraordinary romance. It's extraordinary consistency. They never stop choosing each other. They never stop paying attention. They never stop asking questions that make the other person feel valued. One of the saddest realities is that many people don't realize what they had until curiosity disappears completely. After a breakup, they suddenly remember every little thing they stopped noticing. The laugh they took for granted, the comforting messages, the quiet support during difficult times, the unconditional encouragement. Silence has a strange way of revealing value. When someone who truly cared is no longer there asking if you've eaten, asking how your meeting went, asking whether you're sleeping enough, life suddenly feels much quieter. That's when regret often arrives. But here's something even more important. If someone walked away from your life without ever caring about your emotional well-being, without ever asking how you were truly feeling, without ever wondering how they could make your life better, don't spend years trying to convince them to love you. Real love should never require you to beg for basic care. You are not difficult for wanting emotional connection. You are not needy for wanting someone to notice your pain. You are not asking for too much. You're simply asking the wrong person. Never shrink your heart to fit inside someone else's emotional limitations. The right person won't see your emotions as an inconvenience. They'll see them as an invitation to know you more deeply. Healing begins the day you stop chasing people who only appreciate your presence when it's convenient. Confidence grows the moment you realize your worth isn't determined by who stayed or who left. Your value existed long before they met you, and it will continue long after they're gone. Sometimes people ask, why didn't they fight for me? Maybe the better question is, why are you fighting so hard for someone who never fought to understand you? Love is not measured by how loudly someone says your name. It's measured by how gently they protect your heart. Remember this whenever you're confused. Someone who truly loves you wants to know your fears. They want to know your dreams. They want to know what keeps you awake at night. They want to know how they can make your world a little brighter, because your happiness becomes meaningful to them, not as an obligation, but as a joy. One day you'll meet someone who doesn't make you question where you stand. You won't have to decode mixed signals. You won't have to guess their intentions. You won't spend nights analyzing every text message. You'll simply feel safe. And that kind of peace is one of the greatest forms of love you'll ever experience. Until that day comes, become the kind of person who asks these two questions, not only in romantic relationships, but with the people you love. Ask your parents how they're really doing. Ask your friends how you can support them. Ask your children what they're feeling, instead of only asking what they're doing. Because relationships don't grow through assumptions. They grow through intentional conversations. The strongest hearts are not the ones that never break. They are the ones that continue choosing kindness after they've been broken. Never let one person's inability to love you correctly convince you that genuine love doesn't exist. It does, and when it finds you, you'll recognize it. Not because of expensive gifts, not because of perfect words, but because you'll finally feel understood. You'll feel heard. You'll feel safe enough to be completely yourself. And in a world full of temporary connections, that kind of love is priceless. There is one final truth I want to leave with you, because it has the power to change not only your relationships, but the way you see yourself. The greatest love story you will ever experience does not begin the day someone chooses you. It begins the day you choose yourself. That may sound simple, but don't overlook it. Many people spend years waiting for someone else to ask the right questions while never asking themselves those same questions. How are you really? What can I do to make my own life healthier, calmer, and more meaningful? Those questions aren't just for relationships. They're for healing. Because if you've been through heartbreak, rejection, betrayal, or emotional neglect, there's a good chance you become an expert at taking care of everyone except yourself. You learn to ignore your own needs. You learn to silence your own feelings. You became so focused on earning love that you forgot you were already worthy of it. That is what heartbreak often steals first. Not your ability to love someone else, your ability to love yourself. And when self-love disappears, something dangerous happens. You begin accepting breadcrumbs because you've forgotten what a full meal feels like. You celebrate inconsistency because consistency feels unfamiliar. You mistake occasional attention for genuine commitment. You confuse chemistry with compatibility. You chase people who keep proving they don't want to be caught. But healing changes your vision. It teaches you that love isn't supposed to leave you anxious every day. Love shouldn't make you question your value every morning. It shouldn't force you to earn basic respect. Real love is not perfect. There will be disagreements. There will be misunderstandings. There will be moments when both people are tired, frustrated, or overwhelmed. But even in those moments, the desire to understand each other never disappears. That's the difference. Emotionally mature people don't stop caring because life becomes difficult. They become even more intentional. When conflict enters the room, they don't ask, how do I win this argument? They ask, how do we protect this relationship? Notice the shift. One mindset creates distance. The other creates intimacy. Every lasting relationship is built by two people who understand that being right is less important than staying connected. Pride says, I already know. Love says, help me understand. Ego says, you should figure it out yourself. Love says, we'll figure it out together. Fear says, protect yourself. Love says, build trust. That doesn't mean ignoring red flags. Wisdom and love always walk together. If someone repeatedly dismisses your feelings, if they make you feel guilty for expressing your emotions, if they disappear whenever things become difficult, if they only return when they need something, believe the pattern, not the promise. Words can be rehearsed. Consistency cannot. Anyone can say, I love you, but not everyone is willing to prove it through patience, honesty, accountability, and emotional presence. Pay attention to how someone responds when you're struggling. That's where their character is revealed. Anyone can celebrate your victories. Not everyone can sit beside you during your failures without making you feel like one. Think about the people who changed your life. Was it because they always had the perfect advice? Probably not. It was because they made you feel seen. They listened, they remembered, they cared. Long after you've forgotten the exact words they spoke, you'll remember how safe you felt around them. That's the kind of person you should become. And that's the kind of person you deserve to love. Imagine waking up 1 year from today. You're no longer chasing someone who barely notices you. You're no longer refreshing your phone every 5 minutes. You're no longer wondering why someone who claims to love you leaves you feeling lonely. Instead, you're living with peace. Your confidence has returned. Your smile is genuine again. You've rediscovered your hobbies, your purpose, your laughter, your faith in yourself. Then one day, someone enters your life. They don't overwhelm you with empty promises. They don't play games. They don't disappear without explanation. Instead, they do something beautifully ordinary. They ask, how are you, really? And when you answer honestly, they don't interrupt, they don't judge, they don't try to fix you. They simply listen. Later, when they notice you've been carrying too much on your shoulders, they quietly ask, what can I do to make your life easier? In that moment, something inside you softened, not because you found perfection, but because you found sincerity. You realize that this is what healthy love feels like. It doesn't rush, it doesn't manipulate, it doesn't confuse, it brings clarity. And perhaps for the first time, you understand that love was never supposed to feel like a battlefield. It was supposed to feel like coming home. So if you're listening today with tears in your eyes because someone failed to love you the way you deserved, don't let their inability become your identity. Their lack of emotional maturity is not proof that you're unlovable. Their silence is not evidence that you weren't enough. Their inconsistency does not diminish your worth. Sometimes people leave because they don't know how to love beyond their own wounds. That is their journey, not your value. Your responsibility is not to convince someone to choose you. Your responsibility is to become someone who never abandons themselves. Protect your peace, honor your boundaries, speak your truth with kindness. Walk away from relationships that constantly require you to betray yourself just to keep them alive. Because the right person won't ask you to become smaller. They'll inspire you to become stronger. Never settle for someone who is fascinated by your appearance, but uninterested in your heart. Choose the person who is curious about your dreams, who celebrates your growth, who respects your boundaries, who encourages your healing, who asks the questions that remind you your feelings matter. At the end of the day, love is not measured by how loudly someone says, I need you. Love is measured by how consistently they show, I care about you. And the people who truly care will keep asking those two simple questions for years to come. How are you really? What can I do to make your life easier? Those questions carry empathy. They carry commitment. They carry emotional maturity. Most importantly, they carry love. So don't chase words. Don't chase attention. Don't chase potential. Wait for consistency. Wait for peace. Wait for someone whose actions answer your prayers long before their words ever do. Because when real love finally arrives, you won't spend your time wondering whether they care. You'll know. Not because they said it once, but because they show it every single day. As we come to the end of this message, I want you to remember one thing that could change the way you love forever. Never beg for a place in the heart of someone who keeps making you question your worth. Real love doesn't leave you constantly confused. It doesn't make you wonder where you stand. It doesn't make you earn kindness or compete for attention. The person who truly loves you won't be perfect, but they will be present. They will care enough to ask how you're really doing, even when the world is too busy to notice. They will care enough to ask what they can do to make your life a little lighter, because your happiness matters to them as much as their own. And while you're waiting for that kind of love, become that kind of person. Ask deeper questions. Listen without interrupting. Love without controlling. Respect without conditions. Protect your peace, honor your boundaries, and never lower your standards just because you're afraid of being alone. Remember, being alone for a season is far better than spending years with someone who makes you feel lonely. The right relationship will never require you to abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. If someone walked away from your life, let them go with grace. Don't chase, don't beg, don't lose yourself trying to convince someone to recognize your value. Your worth has never depended on another person's ability to appreciate it. One day, someone will come into your life who won't just admire your smile. They'll care about the tears you try to hide behind it. They won't only celebrate your strengths, they'll stand beside you through your struggles. They won't just tell you they love you, they'll prove it with their patience, their consistency, their honesty, and the simple questions that make you feel seen, heard, and safe. Until that day arrives, keep growing, keep healing, keep believing that the love you give so freely is also the love you deserve to receive. Because the greatest relationship you'll ever build begins with the promise that you'll never abandon yourself again. If this message spoke to your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear these words today. And in the comments, write these powerful words: I deserve a love that brings me peace. Say it until you believe it. Live it until it becomes your reality. And never forget, the right person won't leave you guessing. They'll leave you feeling loved. Thank you for watching. Take care of your heart. Keep believing in your worth. And I'll see you in the next video.